Hello there, and welcome to What's the Point? A question we should all be asking ourselves, and the podcast by brand architect Bill Ellis that will help you discover, clarify, and live your purpose.
So hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of What's the Point? I can't tell you how happy I am for today's guest. He is a tremendous example of living one's purpose, and he has been someone that I've met and admired for easily a decade. Say hi to Brandon Dempsey, the co-founder of a company called Go Brand Go. Welcome, Brandon.
Thanks, Bill. Honored to be here, my friend.
Well, it's a pleasure. So, Brandon is a true go-getter, and in the truest sense, he is also a go-giver. As you all know, I love the Go-Giver. I'm a coach and speaker affiliated with Bob Berg and John David Mann. And Brandon is a terrific example that a go-giver can, in fact, be a go-getter. As a matter of fact, that's the best combination there can be. So, Brandon, it's in your style, he has helped me simplify his introduction because there's so much here that I could say, but very simply, this is how Brandon likes to be thought of: as a husband and a father, an adventurer, an entrepreneur. I'll add serial entrepreneur, a teacher, a leader in nonprofit, and much more. But that'll get us started. Tell us a little bit more about Brandon Dempsey.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, so I'm a husband first, married to an amazing woman named Adrian. She is by far way better looking, way smarter. I hit it out of the league marrying this gal. So just incredible woman. We've been married now for 12 years. We have 2 daughters, so I'm a proud father. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. And we just like to have a ton of fun. So when people ask me, what do you do? My answer is, well, I either spend my time riding motorcycles or playing with my daughters. Like those are 2 of my hobbies. Part of that riding motorcycles, as you mentioned, I'm an adventurer. And so my 4-year-old daughter has been to 8 countries. My wife and I have done 4 continents on motorcycles now. I've ridden in 30 plus countries. And so we just, anything with adventuring, whether it be scuba diving or motorcycle riding or you name it, we're really into it. And we just like to go out and adventure. Latest adventure has been we bought a COVID camper, a motorhome, and we took off and just headed west with no plans and no destination for 3 weeks and just made up a trip out in Utah, Wyoming, and Colorado. Then entrepreneur. So I own a marketing company, Go Brand Go, here in St. Louis. It's a very niche marketing company that works with manufacturing and distribution companies primarily now. And then also my business partner, I started investing in real estate about 3 years ago and worked with 54 units now. So continue to grow a nice real estate portfolio, buying really kind of rundown buildings here in the city and kind of restoring that heart and soul to that building. And then lastly, I'm an avid teacher and nonprofit proponent. So I teach at Washington University here in St. Louis. I teach a master's level marketing class. And then I also lead several different nonprofits, one being Entrepreneurs Organization, very involved in, as well as a local entrepreneurship program I helped start at a local high school here in St. Louis.
Yeah, all of which is amazing, and all of which is such a rich, full suite of likes and talents and pursuits on your part. So your partner, let me just mention him quickly, Derek Weber, is an equally impressive fellow, and you guys have been together for some time. You guys, if I'm not mistaken, had just gotten together when I first met you, and we met at a BNI group, and shortly after that, before Go Brand Go became the juggernaut that it is today, we worked together on my very first independent website after I had left the corporate world. And I've been impressed and growing with you guys in spirit ever since. So you talk about taking over buildings and renovating them. It's a beautiful background you have, and that is the current intergalactic headquarter of Go Brand Go, right?
Correct.
And tell me a little bit about that board on the back with all those Post-it notes, because that's been there for 10 years.
Yeah, so for 10 years, every Monday morning, what we do is we have employees write down what are all the wins from last week. So what are all the good things that happened last week? What personal wins, professional wins, anything that's a win. And then every Monday morning at 8:30, we take turns putting our Post-its up on the board and telling the entire company about what our wins are. because we find that every week there's plenty of crap that happens every week. We want to choose to start off every week on all the positive stuff that happened last week, because it's amazing how quickly that gets forgotten. So we have taken now during COVID, since we're mainly working virtual, we have a virtual wins board that we add to. It's a picture of a whiteboard, and we put Post-its up around it in a Google slide presentation. But this has been a mainstay of Go Brand Go, because we just really want to start off every week on what's all the positive things that happen every week. This board fills up throughout the entire year. And every year we take off all these, the end of the year, we take off all the Post-its, we time capsule them, kind of read through them and talk about them, and then start fresh with a blank board January 1st every year.
That is such an incredible practice, in particular in today's times where there's so much anxiety and consternation and wonder about our future and, frankly, our present, for any number of reasons. So starting the week, every week with on a positive note is just fantastic. It's terrific. And I hope everyone listening learns from that and starts that with your own team. And frankly, even if you're working by yourself like I do, that is something that I can, and I will tell you, I will start doing. I'm going to make my own good news board and get it going there. So, as you know, part of why I've started this podcast is that I believe very strongly in what I call the purpose principle, that to be effective, we have to discover and embrace our purpose, and then that's fueled with our passion. And then we keep it going and grow and evolve through persistence. So tell me a little bit more about young Brandon Dempsey and how you got started as an entrepreneur, because I think that's also very interesting.
Yeah, my path came from an interesting childhood that resulted in me really kind of going out on my own at a really young age. And so put myself, kind of moved out really young, put myself through high school, put myself through college, got emancipated, had to go through a whole emancipation process and whatnot for a minor to become independent of their parents. And so that early process of getting emancipated, an early process of trying to figure out how, because people wouldn't rent to people under 18 and all this other stuff, really meant I had to grow up quick. And for me, it was, okay, once I figured out, I was working at McDonald's, I'd work at Radio Shack, I worked at, did landscaping jobs, any job I could do. And I kind of realized that, hey, I really want to do something that's reliant upon me. I know that if I've got to figure out how to put food on the table, I can go back to figuring out how to put food on the table. And I'm not afraid of that. And so early on, I kind of decided that, hey, I really want to be the captain of my own ship, if you will. I really want to live a life by design and not a life by default. And if I wanted to live a life by design, then I was going to have to design the type of person I wanted to become and the type of profession and career I wanted to have. And so started a company at a young age, fresh out of college, struggled a lot. Bumped into a gentleman named Kevin Eichner, who was at the time the president of a bank here in St. Louis. And Kevin said, Brandon, you're so focused on what you want to become, but who do you want to become? I'm like, what do you mean? Well, I want to become rich and successful and blah, 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 and have all these things. And he said, that's great, Brandon, but you're never going to realize what you want to become. You're never going to realize what you want to achieve if you don't focus on who you need to become first. And that concept of who, the more I talked to other leaders about it, really stuck with me, because so many leaders shared with me that if we can focus on who we're trying to become as a person first, then what we want to achieve manifests itself. And I'll tell you, in my career, I've had multiple different companies. From the first company I started out of college, we sold that one, started another company. That one failed miserably, lost everything that I made in the first company, started over, started a third company, then merged into this current company, Go Brand Go, and now I've launched this real estate company. And I'll tell you that the focus on who over what, and focusing on who I need to become as a husband, as a father, as an adventurer, as an entrepreneur, as all those things we talked about, and who I want to be, has manifested what I want to achieve in my life. So really this concept of living a life by design, not a life by default, and focusing on who over what have been two of the main tenets in my entrepreneurship career.
Well, that's fantastic. And I hope everyone listening heard that, took notes. If not, hit rewind, listen to it again, because that's at the heart and soul of What's the Point. When I talk about what's the point, it's exactly what I mean. It starts within ourselves. What's the point of myself? What's the point of my existence? Who am I? And it took me a long time in my life to realize that point. So that's another one of the many blessings you've had, is to have that realization early on and to embrace it. So kudos to you, and thank you so much for sharing that. Tell me a little bit, because the merging, as you say, of the two companies, yours and Derek's, on the one hand, seems like it made all the sense in the world, and on the other hand, when I first heard about it, I kind of went, huh. So tell me how that came about.
So when the two of us started talking, I had at the time a web development company. So I was doing a lot of online marketing, and I was programming, I was designing, I was doing a lot of stuff on my own. Derek had an offline marketing company. And we started going to meetings together, and we'd slide 2 business cards over. And we'd hand 2 business cards to a person. They'd be like, so you guys are the same company? We're like, no, we're separate companies, but we're very complementary, because if you do online marketing, there's going to be some offline stuff you need to do, and vice versa. And as we started talking, I remember he came over to my house one day, and we sat down. We actually sat down over a glass of scotch, and we started talking. And we talked about, hey, does 1 + 1 equal more than 2? And for us, 1 + 1, we felt like equaled 10, versus 1 + 1 equals 2. And what we looked at was 4 components in a business. So every business has sales, marketing, operations, and finance. And if you look at that sales, marketing, operations, and finance, I was really, really good at the sales and marketing. And I'd say mediocre at best at the operations and finance. Derek was really, really, really good at the operations and finance of a company, but mediocre at best at the sales and marketing of it. And so when I looked at a partner, there was a lot of discussions we had, because our egos both wanted us to have controlling interest in our company. And so our egos we were both trying to figure out how to pay each other to like buy more of each other's interest after we merged 2 companies. We ultimately ended up and settled and went 50-50. And it's been second to my marriage, the best partnership I've ever had, because it's a partnership that allows me to just be and do what I do best. It allows him to be and do what he does best. And it's a partnership where 1 + 1 = 10.
Well, you know what they say, the sum is greater than the total of its parts. So there are so many people that would have, and probably did, advise you against going 50-50 in ownership. And there are inherent pitfalls in doing exactly that. And that's what makes Go Brand Go and your partnership with Derek that much more unique and impressive. So when you decided that you were such a good partnership, how long did it take to really get to that realization that going 50-50 and having that trust, because that made both of you very vulnerable. And it made both of you really have to look within and say, hey, ego, how you doing? Tell me about that.
So no one's ever asked that question, Bill. That's a very in-depth question. Yes. I mean, the first 6 months of our partnership, we both agreed to not take any salary. And then our first year of our partnership, we agreed to each take $2,000 a month. And so that was, we made a whopping $24,000 each that first year. And we did that because we had wives who were amazing and could help support us and be our breadwinners of our household. And B, we did that because we said we want to pour everything we've got into building infrastructure and getting employees and getting stuff up and going as fast as we can. And each taking a shared sacrifice for a greater goal, I think really cemented our partnership early on, that both of us were willing to do whatever it took. As a part of learning and growing, what we decided to do was that Derek reports to me when it comes to operations and finance, and I report to him when it comes to the sales and marketing. So I'm in charge of sales and marketing, but I have to kind of report to Derek on it, and then he has to report to me on the operations and finance. And what we decided was, hey, we're going to have our own sandboxes, and as long as the other person is performing, we stay out of the other person's sandbox. As long as you're hitting your numbers and hitting, the strategic goals you set. And then we said, okay, how do we do a tiebreaker? And what we decided was that we would form a group of our accountant, our attorney, our banker, and our wealth advisor, and we'd meet with them once a quarter. And if there was ever a topic the two of us didn't agree on, we would take it to that committee, and then they would be the tiebreaker vote. And that's actually written into our operating agreement. From there, we also said, well, we don't ever want to be in business with each other's spouses. So our spouses actually signed off on a for sale if one of us unfortunately gets hit by a bus. And then we have a life insurance policy to pay for it and everything else. But we really tried to engineer the organization from the ground up of, hey, what are the mistakes we've heard of other people from a 50-50 partnership? And what do you have to put in place, both legally, but then also from a relationship standpoint with how often you're checking in, how you have those tiebreaker votes. And we found it's just been a really, really, really good foundation that's forced us to get along. Because it's like a marriage, Bill, where he and I do not always see eye to eye on things. We've had plenty of arguments and disagreements, but we're both aligned to a future of what we're trying to build.
Well, you say that, and that's life. And having that realization is good because, a part of what I do now is I work with the materials from Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions, but it's called the 5 Behaviors of a Cohesive Team. And at the very level, the very first level of 5, it talks about trust. And the reason that trust is there is to get to the second level, which is conflict. And a lot of people hear conflict and they go, oh, but if it's healthy conflict, if you have that trust, if you have that belief in whomever you're dealing with, that you can be vulnerable, as we talked about earlier, that's amazing. Now, my mind goes in this way. I go to an extreme scenario. So say you two need a tiebreaker and you go to your tie-breaking board, I'll call it, and of those 4, they're 2 and 2. Then what?
Yeah, then it becomes an interesting conversation. Fortunately, haven't had that. We actually had the attorney back out, so it became our regular meetings over the past couple of years has been just the banker, the accountant, and the wealth advisor, and so that kind of helped that. But what he and I both agreed on was that if we ever came to an issue that we couldn't agree on, that we would debate it passionately. And that whoever it was responsibility under that sales, marketing, operations, and finance, whoever's responsibility it was, then the other person, once we'd have the discussion, we'd make a decision. And then whoever was more passionate or whoever it fell under their purview, they owned the decision. And the other person backed it 100%, even if they didn't agree with it. And I'll tell you that there have been several times where I'm like, I don't agree with this, but I'm going to trust you on it. And there's been plenty of times where Derek's gone, I don't agree with you on this idea at all, Brandon, but you know what? I'm going to trust you on it.
Yeah, that is just incredible. And again, this is one of the reasons I was so excited that you were able to find the time and the willingness to be on the show, because there's just so much richness to mine from your experience and how you do things. You talked about if we're hit by a bus, God willing, we aren't. With all of your adventures, I mean, let's talk scuba diving, motorcycling, hiking, mountain climbing, if I'm not mistaken, Ironman triathlons, which comes under the heading of what's the point to me?
Yeah.
But you do a lot of things that are adventurous and exciting, but pose a bit of danger. I mean, I suspect that helps you with the adrenaline, but does that give anyone else pause for concern?
The motorcycle riding is something that my wife and I have talked a lot about. I mean, it's a passion that I absolutely love. I had one major accident. It was about 3 years ago. I took off. I was down in South Africa with some buddies, and I borrowed a buddy's bike and took off and had a few days of riding. And on one of those days of riding, another rider was like, Brandon, where'd you learn to ride? You're such a good rider, and blah, 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 and telling me how great I am of riding. So my ego, of course, is getting to become the size of the room. And the next day I took off on that bike, came around a corner because I was a good rider and I was going to really take that corner nice and hard. And that corner turned a lot sharper than I had planned. And ultimately I chose into the mountain instead of off the mountain. And I blew up and totaled a nice Triumph Tiger that my buddy had 30 kilometers on at the time when I picked it up. And by the time I blew it up, I don't know, I had somewhere several hundred more on that. But my wife and I had a long conversation about, is it time? Do I hang up the helmet? Do I hang up the boots and stop riding? And what we talked about was that the idea of riding, I mean, shoot, to take this call today, I jumped on my motorcycle and rode down here from my house to my office just so I wouldn't have any interruptions.
We know where that discussion ended up then. Tell me about from having the discussion to riding your motorcycle in today.
And so my wife and I talked about, like, do we stop? Do I stop? Do we stop? Because we were still riding. And my wife was the one who said, look, that's what gives you fuel. Like to me, that's my therapy. I mean, I get on that bike and I have to be 100% focused because I have to work 2 hands and 2 feet, and I have to act like every person on the road is trying to kill me. And so it puts me into the state of flow. And I don't know if you've read the book Flow or not. I can't pronounce the guy's last name, but it's a very long last name. But just look at the book Flow, and it talks about how when we get in this zone, when the future is not, we're not thinking about the future, we're not thinking about the past, we're only in the moment. And it happens to like when you're downhill snow skiing, like you just get in flow. And for me, riding a motorcycle puts me in flow and it clears my head. And when I get off that bike and I'm safely at my destination, I feel energized, and it's a part of me. And so I've chosen to embrace the danger with it. I mean, driving cars and doing things are definitely dangerous, but I've chosen to embrace that danger. But a part of embracing that danger, I think, is I take a lot of precautions. So not only do I wear ATGAT, so all the gear all the time, from helmet to neck collar to jacket, pants, boots, gloves, everything. But I look like a flying circus coming down the highway because I have so many lights on the front of my bike, as well as all these flashing lights on the back of my bike when I brake. And so I think part of the danger and part of the risk is accepting the level of risk you're comfortable with. And level of risk, like to me, I know when I ride outside my limits, that's when I get hurt. And so I have to stay inside my limits and also spend the money and the time at taking classes and getting better. So to me, risk is about analyzing the risk. And for me, the analyzing the risk was it fills so much of my bucket up that's not something yet that I'm willing to, that we've decided we're going to let go yet.
So there's so much in that you've packaged into that story. Let me try to break it down a little bit. First of all, when it comes to, well, you said the flying circus, the sad part there is it's a fact that so many people on the road aren't necessarily trying to kill you, but they certainly can, because the vast majority of people just aren't aware enough of motorcycles as part of the traffic flow. And I've got to be honest with you, a lot of that falls onto the backs of other motorcycle riders because they ride like idiots, and that doesn't make it any easier. So the fact that you are a quote unquote flying circus so that you'll get noticed makes all the sense in the world. And bringing that back into the business world, what that does is so beautifully encapsulates what a true entrepreneur looks at. People think that entrepreneurs are giant risk takers. And while entrepreneurs aren't adverse to risk, the entrepreneurs that I know, the successful entrepreneurs, look at something and say, how can we minimize and manage as best we can this risk to reach the goal that we want? Does that make sense?
Bill, that's a fantastic, you've got my brain spinning, because so we started doing real estate, Bill, and we chose to do some big projects with real estate, but we chose to do projects that had historic tax credits. So like we took down a building a few years ago that we bought for 130 grand. We put $500,000, into it. But if the building didn't go, we ended up getting $250,000 in tax credits back on that building. And now we're buying buildings, and the tax credits that we get back on the building are sometimes more than what we bought the building for. Wow. Because it's 25% state and 20% federal for restoring historic buildings. So when we look at a project, we look at, okay, what's the profit we can make on buying the building and then leasing the building out? But then also we have these tax credits set up that they protect our risk. So if something goes south, which we've had several buildings go south from contractors and overages and whatnot, we make no profit on the building, but suddenly the tax credit is that safe haven for us. And so you are 100% correct in that from an entrepreneurship standpoint, the way we look at it is how do we minimize that risk? And everything we do is all about minimizing risk. That's a fantastic metaphor.
Well, great. Thank you. And it's so the point there is anyone that's listening that wants to start their own business or to do anything, frankly, in life, it's not to be afraid of risk. It's to identify the risk and then say, what can I do? What can we do to manage through that? Now, talking about your real estate, the real estate arm, if you will, of the Brandon Derrick partnership, tell me about your newest project for Go Brand Go. I mean, where you are, you've been there for 10 years. I love that building, and that's where we first did any business together. But this new thing you have going on is incredible.
Thanks, Bill. We're stoked about it. So, last year, a gentleman, so we started buying all these residential properties. A gentleman came to us and said, "Hey, I know of a school that's for sale. And it's a school that is quite a large school, 27,000 square feet. Would you be interested in buying the school and turning it into apartments?" And I said, "Well, we'll take a look at it." So we go over and we take a look at this school and we're like, it's not the right layout for apartments, but this would be one heck of an awesome office. So we have about 4,500 square feet in our current office. So we're moving from 4,500 to 27,000 square feet. And a part of this is it is one of two of the oldest still standing St. Louis City public schools. And what we've decided is that we're going to make it not only are we going to make it our new office, but we're going to launch a nonprofit in there that serves the manufacturing and distribution community. And we're going to call it the Conflux. And so what Derek and I believe is that the more we give, back to your point of the go-giver, the more we give to the community, the more we give to others, the more we receive. And there's a quote by Zig Ziglar that I love to live by that says, "You can have everything in life you want if you just help enough other people get what they want."
Right.
And so when we looked at the school, we said, how could we use this school as a platform to give our employees what they want, which is a gym, a coffee shop, a bar, entertainment space, like just awesome stuff. How could we give our referral partners? How could we give our customers? And how could we give the community of the group that we serve what they want and help them curate content and connections? And so this school, we're putting several $1 million into this school. And it's a huge project, but we believe this is a big manifestation of quite frankly, of the go-giver and of helping give to others what they're trying to achieve.
It's terrific. And when we're at a later date, I'd like to talk to you about that because I've got an idea or two that I just want to float by you and see if it might make sense. And knowing you and how your mind works, you're probably already all over what I'm thinking. So yeah, that's going to be an incredible office. And depending on how long we are threatened with COVID, going from 4,500 square feet to 27,000 square feet certainly addresses any need for social distancing requirements.
Right.
You can almost everyone get their own 4,000 square feet.
Pretty much. We've made jokes that we're going to put everybody in their own classroom. Everybody gets a classroom to themselves.
That's great. So you talk about charity work, and one of the things I know that is, well, let me step back because I want to go back to the motorcycle thing because I think that also leads into the next point I have for you. You talked about discussing with your wife the pros and cons of continuing, and you both realize that fuels that's part of the passion that drives you. And another important point that I always try to make is that our passion doesn't always have to directly fuel into our purpose. Sometimes our purpose helps to fuel our passion. And for you to do what you do gives you the opportunity to do your motorcycling, to do your Ironman triathlon and all the other adventures you undertake, right? So that having that personal fulfillment is what's going to help you continue in your purpose, business and otherwise, because of the reward that gives you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So speaking of things that really excite you, I know that not-for-profit and teaching and helping others is way up at the top of your list. And you mentioned EO, and I know you're involved in that. And I know you've traveled internationally with EO and speaking. Brandon's an exceptional speaker. And you can certainly find out more about that at the gobrandgo.com and look at the About section for Brandon. And there's several topics that he speaks on. I'm going to come back to that as well. But I want to stay on EO for a while because also you are, if not the head of, on the committee for the EO Accelerator, which in itself is a teaching program. Talk to me about EO and help everyone listening understand a little bit more what that is, the Entrepreneurs Organization, and what it does.
So Entrepreneurs Organization is an organization that's just that. It's an organization that teaches entrepreneurs and helps entrepreneurs become better entrepreneurs, better spouses, better community leaders, better parents. It looks at the totality of the entrepreneur. So specifically the EO Accelerator program is a program that's designed to help entrepreneurs, primarily sub $1 million in revenue entrepreneurs, figure out how to really teach them almost like a master's level in entrepreneurship. So what I tell people is, hey, my first company, I was going places. Like I was going to go someplace. I was working on it. The accelerator program just did that. It increased the arc of how fast I was going to be able to accomplish what I was accomplishing. And it both shortened the time it took because it taught me how to get out of my own way. It taught me how to lean into my strengths and not try to fix my weaknesses, but try to focus on my strengths versus focusing on my weaknesses. And it taught me how to understand business. And then EO, as I graduated from EO Accelerator and got into Entrepreneurs Organization, I was surrounded by other leaders of businesses. And it's amazing. You get a bunch of business leaders together who are all trying to accomplish the similar goals. And suddenly, shockingly, you start realizing new ideas to accomplish the goals you want. And a mentor of mine once told me, Brandon, you're going to be the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. You're going to be the average of your 5 closest friends. So you will make the average amount of money of your 5 closest friends. You'll have the average amount of values as your 5 closest friends. Like, you will achieve the average of your 5 friends. So pick your 5 wisely. And what EO allowed me to do is start understanding, okay, who do I want to pick as my 5? Wow. Who do I want to associate with? Who do I want to spend my time with? Who do I want to learn from? And the more and more that I got to learn and got to meet other incredible entrepreneurs from, as you said, around the world, I got to see new ways of making money. I got to see new ways of leadership, new ways of being a father. And it just exposed me to this network of people that I had previously not had any access to. Now, to wrap this up, one last story is that a few years ago, I decided, you know what? I really admire men who are married, have a great relationship with their kids, are physically fit, and have a great business. Because I noticed that there were a lot of successful, quote unquote, entrepreneurs who had beer guts that extended 2 or 3 feet out from their body. They didn't know their kids. They were fooling around with a ton of different women and had no hair, and maybe they were rich and had a lot of money, but you look at their family life and their personal life, and it looked soulless, right? Or they were super successful with their family, but had terrible businesses that weren't ever going to be able to provide for them. And I said, I want to meet these people. And so I used the network of EO, and I've since met 10, actually, no, I think we're at 11 now, different billionaires who meet all 4 criteria. Passionate relationship with their spouse, great relationship with their kids, successful business, and physically fit. Because that's what I want to model. That's what I want to aspire to become with my family and with my business.
That's incredible. That's amazing. And again, just an absolute nugget for people to take away. Those listening, if you're listening, make a note. When you talked about the 2 to 3 foot beer gut and fooling around and all of those other negatives, that for me brings me back to purpose and what's the point. And from my experience, not taking longer to get to where I am than perhaps you did to get to where you are, it occurred to me that a lot of my life was off the track that I would have preferred because I didn't know me. I didn't like me. I wasn't the me that I wanted to be, and I wasn't even aware of that. Now, what I've come to realize is I had to be that guy so that I could become the guy I am today. So all of those mistakes, all of those failures, all of those shortcomings were just rungs on the ladder to success. So again, you are a terrific example that you don't have to wait late in life to learn valuable lessons. And that's why I admire so much for you sharing it to other people. So we're kind of closing in on how much time I asked you to provide, but there's a few things I do want to ask you to speak about, and I'm just going to mention them and let you run with it. So when I mentioned earlier the Go Brand Go about Brandon Page, and if you want to find out about Brandon, here's what he put down. He lists his mission, his vision, and his values. Talk about those 3 elements.
Yeah. So my mission is to be a spark that ignites change. And so my mission when I work with people is to be a spark that ignites change for people. It's not my job to help solve. I don't believe it's my mission to solve other people's problems. It's my mission to be a spark to a new idea, to help people solve the challenges and opportunities that are in front of them. And I want to be, I feel myself as part of helping facilitate that spark. My vision is to lead empowerized, so empowered and energized people and organizations.
I love that word, by the way.
Thank you. So is to lead empowerized people who want to shut up and go. And Shut Up and Go is the title of a book I published 4 years ago. But it's people who want to mainly tell the voices in their head to shut up and we're just going to go. But it's empowerized people. And then I have my core values, or I have 4 core values. One is health, and that's to live wholly and be a whole person. So I try to eat as much whole food and I work out every day. I don't drink soda. Like, everything's about health. Next is execution. So I want to learn, grow, and adapt. So I'm all about daily execution. All right. And then next one is about health. I got to get them right. Health, execution, and then ownership. And so I'm really big on, I'm 100% responsible for my own happiness. And then next one is all about learning and growing. And then lastly, it's about connection and being 100% present with people. And so health, execution, learning, ownership, connection are my 5 core values. And so an example of like how I try to live these is that they take connection. So Bill, I used to have an Apple Watch, and I loved my Apple Watch. It's a great device. But I noticed when I was present with people, the thing would just be buzzing on my wrist. Mm-hmm. And I know I could turn it off and turn it or whatever, but it was a distraction, and it was preventing me from being 100% present with people. And I decided, all right, I can't wear an Apple Watch. So I wear a normal watch every day now instead of an Apple Watch. And so when I spend time with people, I try to orient my day that I can be 100% present with you. Hence, like today's interview, I chose to come to the office so I wouldn't have a 4-year-old or 1-year-old in the background screaming, because that would have interrupted my presence. And so at the end of every day, I take stock on how did I do on my 5 core values and my mission, my vision. Did I live it out? And then every morning when I get up, I meditate and I journal and I write. And then I also go through my mission, vision, and all my values, because that's my centering at the beginning of every day. This is what I'm setting out to do. And then I do a recap at the end of every day on, okay, how did I do on my mission, vision, and values?
Well, it's a known fact that the more successful people have a routine that they start their day with, and yours mirrors so many that I've heard and so many that I've spoken with. To start off by getting centered, by reminding yourself of reminding yourself what's the point. So you mentioned your book, Shut Up and Go. I'm sure they can get that wherever books are sold, certainly through Amazon, I assume, if no place else. And just 2 final things quickly. First, I just want to say this. I mentioned earlier that you're an incredible speaker, and I've had the gift of hearing you speak on several occasions. But here's what makes Brandon so powerful as a speaker. When Brandon talks, he understands the what. He understands the topic. But what he focuses on is the how. It's what do you do with this? And I've learned a lot from that to adjust my talks and to adjust my communication to help people understand the how, because understanding the what is fine, but if you don't understand the how, it doesn't help. So I encourage you, if your company, if your organization are looking for a speaker that's going to make a difference, seek Brandon, because I guarantee you his talks will help without a doubt. And if they don't, then call me and we'll talk. But the last thing I want to say is one question that I've begun asking all of my guests, and it's very simply this: what's the point?
I think for me, the point is you have a choice. The point is whatever you want it to make it to be. And that a lot of people don't ask themselves, what is the point? They live a life by default, and they have broken marriages. They have broken relationships with their kids. They are in dead-end jobs that they're not happy with, and they're living this life by default. And they ask themselves, what's the point all the time? Because they're truly just unhappy. And when you find people that are on fire, that are loving life, it's people that say, okay, here's what I want, and now I'm going to go figure out how to get it. And there's only 2 ways to change. If you want to change where you're at today, there's only 2 ways to do it. You have to read books and you have to talk to other people. And reading books counts as listening to podcasts, just so we're clear. But you've got to talk to other people, and you've got to read or learn and take in other content, because it's the only place you get new ideas. And it's the people who say, okay, I want to create a different station in life. I want to live a life by design instead of a life by default. And I feel like we all have the ability to figure out what is the point of our life? What is the point of what we're trying to do? And I will tell you, at least in my life and of the countless hundreds of people I've talked to and interviewed about this very similar topic, the people who say, okay, here's what I'm trying to build, and here's what I'm going to go after, and here's what I want to build, like here's what I want to become, here's what I want to accomplish, and then take a step back and say, okay, who do I need to be in order to accomplish that thing, right? So when I say I want to be an amazing husband, that means I've got to read, I've got to talk to other dads, other husbands. Like I've got to spend time with my wife and figure out her love language. And like, I've got to invest the time and the effort and the money it takes to become a better who of a husband. And so for me, the point is what we all have a choice of what do we want to make it. But if we don't choose to make a specific point, a specific target that we're after, then we're going to live this life by default, and we're kind of just wandering generalities, if you will. And we will end up with a life that we just get by default versus choosing to say, okay, here's the point I'm after, like a point on a map, right? You've got to go for it. I've got to know where it's at. I've got to have a map on how to get there. Talking to the people is helping you fill in that map, but I'm going to stay focused on trying to get there.
That's an amazing answer. I'm not surprised at all from an amazing guy. We can take the defeatist application of the question, what's the point? Or we can take the positive, what's the point? What are we trying to do? And if we're not achieving that point, adjust and move on. And when you talk about continuing your efforts to your example of a marriage of learning and growing and speaking, that all comes under the persistence. That's all what keeps it going. Brandon Dempsey, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your experience and your insight. Brandon Dempsey, adventurer extraordinaire, traveler, husband, father, and spectacular business owner. Thank you so much for your time.
You're awesome, Bill. Later, man. Good to see you, buddy.
See you, man.
Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you like what you heard, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We can promise you'll gain value in every one. Rating and reviewing makes us more discoverable and helps others find out what's the point. And if you'd like to know more about Bill Ellis or contact him, please visit his website, www.brandingpillars.com. See you next time.